Shalom and welcome to the Sighted Moon newsletter, audio/video. We're going to be looking at the most recent newsletter, which is Will a Nation Be Born at Once? This is the 20th newsletter for this year, 5856, and it is the 13th day of the 5th month. Technically, it is now the 14th day. But this newsletter was meant for the Shabbat, which was just yesterday, just a short while ago. So published July 10th, 2020. Again, the 20th newsletter for this year. And it says here, July 11th, 2020, Shabbat Shalom to the royal family of Yehovah. Moving past that, a letter from Brother Ike. This letter now has its full thoughts. Please analyze the stories and reports because it contains prophetic insights on what's happening in the Philippines and even the world regarding the Torah restoration movement. Thank you for being a brother to me and also to MLTC family of Torah keepers and our sphere of influence in the Torah restoration movement in and around the Philippines. Just like what I've said in my testimony, in this letter, I didn't expect to have built a Torah Bible school building, though it's small, but usable and practical for our next stage of work in teaching Torah to the Filipinos. After 100 days of construction, I have exhausted all or most of our funds. In fact, I had incurred a personal debt of around $2,500. Still, we need around $3,000 to complete the construction of the Bible school, Torah Bible school. Please bear in mind, it is my personal faith in Yehovah that I always force myself to believe that Yehovah will be with me as long as my motive is to work for his kingdom and spread his Torah. I push myself to the limit by long prayer and fasting so I can maximize my mission here while I'm alive. You know that we have a similar passion to spread the Torah of Yehovah by teaching his Sabbaths and feast days and warn people about the perilous times that we are living in right now. My motive is pure. So if I ever ask for help in terms of finances from Sighted Moon, it's not for my personal gain, but purely for the work of Torah. I know somehow you know that. I have to talk to Brother Ken. We are communicating by email. I have plans to go in the month of August to see a potential Goshen in the area of Infanta Quezon province, 3 hours from Antipolo. I'm overloaded with work with the soft opening of our Torah Community Bible School. I don't get tired because I know I need to have enough energy, enthusiasm, faith to believe in this end-time restoration work, notwithstanding the challenge that we are facing in our current, notwithstanding the challenge that we are facing in our current situation of lockdown due to COVID-19. I don't know how Yehovah is going to put all these things together, but my faith says I believe Yehovah can do this. I work, I plant, I nurture, and expect the best from Yehovah. I think I'm maturing as a person. I'm 51 and still so much potential. I think things are becoming better for the Torah movement. I hope Sighted Moon brethren are building the same ark so we can become one in the near future when they reach the Philippines. The most challenging thing is to have the wisdom to lead people and at the same time maintain harmony. I have talked to Bishop Butch Belgica and attorney Jeremiah Belgica. They both agreed to be our advisors in our plan to set up the foundation. So long, Big Brother. Jehovah bless us all. May He favor you and bless you in all things spiritually, materially, and financially. Your little brother, Brother Ike, servant of Jehovah. July 2nd, 2020, Shalom Sighted Moon, Psalm 122. It's been quite a long few months since I wrote Four-Sighted Moon. Since March 15th, the lockdown in the Metro Manila area due to Corona, and up till now, the government extended the lockdown till July 15. Up till now, things haven't quite normalized yet. Will it become normal again? The good thing is Jehovah doesn't change, and still we move on to this life according to His perfect ways, because it is His world that we live in. King Jehovah will impose His will on this world, whether people like it or not. I would like to share with you some insight, which I believe is relevant for present times. This is what I call the power of blessing and curse. It is in the book of Deuteronomy 29, verse 29. Moses, after warning the 12 tribes of Israel of the curses of disobedience, the secret things belong to Yah, our God, but things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this Torah. An interpretation which is most relevant to the context for the statement says that that which is revealed includes the Torah, with its promises of blessing and curses. Consequently, that which is hidden can only refer to the mode in which God will carry out in the future His counsel and His will, which He has revealed in the book of the law, and complete His work of salvation, notwithstanding the apostasy of people. Therefore, the Torah, Jehovah's revelation, has behind it God's secret, whereby His counsel shall stand, and man's rebellion shall be confounded, to the triumph of His kingdom in His own time and His own way. In brief, the law is revealed, and its fulfillment in our time is assured. Commentary by Rushduni. As Brother Joseph taught us, the cycle curses in his books, and I agree with Joseph that it is Jehovah Himself who sent the virus to the people of the world. Yeah, it did come from China, since most products are made in China. LOL. But Jehovah had allowed this virus to strike mankind, just as it is written, Deuteronomy 28. The description of the curse is that Jehovah will strike you with swelling, lesions, fever, burning heat, thirst, and with sword, wind blasts, withering. They will pursue you until your destruction. Until your destruction. The verse does not say they will destroy you. Rather, the sense of this verse is that people will decline and be destroyed as a result of a long accumulation of attack, hunger, and disease. Commentary by Rabbi Rashi. It is very clearly revealed in the Torah that King Jehovah is serious about his threats in Deuteronomy 28 and 29. If people will disobey His laws and commandments, it is a blood covenant that we signed when we accepted Yeshua as Lord and Savior. This is an ongoing transaction up to our present time. Jehovah has revealed His secrets in the Torah, more particularly what Joseph Dumond had discovered with the keeping of the sabbatical years, letting the land rest, in the whole earth, and not just in the land of Israel today. This sabbatical year is the most ignored biblical commandment, even in the Hebraic Messianic Torah movement. Sad to know. Nobody's really paying attention to this commandment. Jehovah revealed His perfect will in the Torah, and what is hidden before has been revealed to us now because Jehovah loves us and cares for us. He cares for us so much that he has revealed this truth, these truths to us, genuine Torah keepers. Aren't we? We better be, or else. Last February 28th, I flew to Davao City. This will be my first mission trip for the year 2020. I'm scheduled and was privileged to be invited to speak to about 500 pastors and ministers from all over Mindanao. And that's a video there. This was a great opportunity for me to share about the concept of unity in the 7 feasts of Jehovah in Leviticus 23. Since I got extra backup being designated as lecturer for churches nationwide by Bishop Butch Belgica, who is presently appointed by President Duterte to head the OPARA, Office of Presidential Advisor for Religious Affairs. OPARA is active in promoting the Sabbath and the 7 feasts to the political leadership to actively pursue spiritual training as part of the mandate and directive by the local government unit, LGU. So while I was in Davao, I actively engaged in speaking to different groups about the mandate of OPARA, and it gave me confidence like never before because now I can teach the Sabbath and the feast to pastors and churches right to their faces. This made my work easier since you know how much the Sabbath is rejected in modern churches today. So wherever, each group I went to, within an hour of the lecture, the talks, straight to the point, I'm telling pastors to uphold the agenda of the office. Each home, a church. Each family, a small church. Okay, I'll try to read this. Just bear with this. Bawat tahanan may sambahan, bawat pamilya may kapilya. Okay, that's as much as I can do. Of course, I received outright rejection by pastors in most of my lectures. Since it sounds like changing or attacking their current system of worship, like Sunday church assembly in large numbers, I just move on and see who are interested, and later I focus on them. But I made sure that in each Christian group that I went to, I would let them sign a petition letter or manifesto to support the vision of OPARA to have the Sabbath and the 7 feasts as national holidays. You know, House Bill 6312 was not approved in Congress. It has to be refiled again for this bill to be active again. It's next to impossible. If the majority of congressmen would vote in favor on this. If they won't, I think he means if they won't vote in favor of this. So now the vision is being pursued by OPARA and of course by us who are passionately teaching Torah to Filipinos since 2006. The vision is very much alive. Are you with us? So for almost 2 weeks, I was in Mindanao, making connections with different ministerial groups. I was so happy about the progress being made to spread and teach Torah to Filipinos that I attempted to plan a big event for the Feast of Pentecost in Davao. So by faith, I reserved a venue. Torah-keeping brethren from Digo City, Davao del Sur, had pledged to support me in the logistics and promotion. Bishop Benz Lumasag, with his vast numbers of ministers, have pledged to support Pentecost, the celebration last May. My plan was to invite Bishop Belgica and formally launch OPARA agenda in Mindanao in a big way, probably even invite Joseph Dumond to come over to continue with this momentum of spreading the Torah. Joseph told me recently that in all his research being done in the book of Isaiah, the islands of the sea being referred to is none other than the Philippines, who are waiting for Torah and the glory of Yah to be seen among the humble Filipino people who have been oppressed religiously for centuries. When will my Filipino people be delivered from centuries of lies and oppression? Millions of Filipinos are poor because we were taught to worship idols and disobey the Sabbath and the feasts and the laws in the Torah. These are the real causes of the curses in the Philippines. To my demise, my plane ticket back to Manila was March 14. With all hopes and dreams, I came back home, based in Mandaluyong City, only to know that the Philippine government has declared a lockdown on all cities in Metro Manila because of the virus. All local governments had issued travel bans to minimize the movement of people as a precautionary measure. All of this was new to us, so I decided to move my family and other brethren to stay in a farm that we have in Antipolo City. Later, a new report says President Duterte himself had announced that it is forbidden for churches to have mass gatherings, as well as secular sectors of Philippine society to have mass gatherings. So everyone was shocked to know the real current serious condition due to the virus. But as for us, doorkeepers, we just continue to have a family Shabbat gathering, and we told everyone within the circle of faith just to have Shabbat at their homes. And besides, this is what we have been teaching in line with the Opara, each family a home church. My eyes have been enlightened to the fact that Jehovah had made a perfect move to teach Filipinos how true worship is to be conducted at their own homes, which is to have a covenant meal on Sabbath with each of their family members. Now, this is a big blow to big churches who can no longer this is a blow to big churches because they're now forbidden, by the authority to hold church gatherings. There's nothing they can do about it. Indeed, 40 years in the wilderness journey, like the Israelites had, is likened to a process that transforms God's people through trials and testing. Through unpleasant times that we experienced during the lockdown, or though unpleasant times were experienced during the lockdown, something good came up during the lockdown, and one of them is Opara, or through Opara. Can you see what's happening here? In the middle of the lockdown, last May, in 2 weeks' time, the Opara office received more than 10,000 pastors registering for its program. What I see here is Jehovah working behind the scenes. He's preparing the Filipinos to learn Torah, giving them the right venue for the Torah revolution in the Philippines. Watch out for more of this coming to fruition. On hand, my dreams for the Torah restoration movement is also coming to fruition as well. I remember back then that I have saved construction materials like wooden posts and lumber because before I left for Davao, my plan was to renovate my small farmhouse in Antipolo. Coupled with little savings when the lockdown had begun, on March 18, I started to plan for the construction of the second floor of my little 10-year-old farmhouse. My plan changed when a neighbor of mine, a neighbor friend, had offered a backhoe bulldozer, heavy equipment service rental. With all my savings at hand, I proceeded with the paving of sloppy trenches on the farm property. After 2 days of work with the backhoe, I realized for the first time the backhoe had cleared and flattened 1,500 square feet of livable open space. That is the time when I believe the Holy Spirit of Yah struck with me the idea to build a small Torah Bible school. As you know, when it's work for a Torah, I give it my all, no matter what the cost or circumstance. We have a saying in the Torah that out of wilderness comes blessing or curse. But this time, after 100 days of lockdown, a great blessing came up, the construction of the very first Torah Bible school. This is a living miracle. I expect Yah to do more in the coming days, since we believe that Yah will provide for our every need, as long as we uphold the covenant of Torah. We continue to believe He will guide us along the way. Our next mission will be to find our potential Goshen that could house our Torah community with all our families. We welcome Sighted Moon Brethren when they also plan to go live in the Philippines. Until then, more good reports. Brother Ike, or Ike. SightedMoon.com mission. Sighted Moon began in 2005, trying to explain to people about the sabbatical and Jubilee years, how they reveal end-time prophecy, especially Daniel 9. We set up the website in 2006. In 2007, we began our weekly teachings from the first Aviv that year and have continued until today, each week. The only week or weeks we did not put a newsletter was when we were away keeping the feasts. Other than those times, we have not missed a week. We have used Yah's word to do this. By that I mean we have used the scriptures. We have not used any apocryphal books. We have used history and artifacts to back up and support what Jehovah has said. We have been blessed to be able to go to Israel 18 times and have been able to give tours on almost all of those trips. We have met friends for life on each trip. We have taught you about the Sabbath, holy days, explained to you how each was corrupted, which led to other groups forming. We have taken the false teaching that some put out and walked you through the scriptures so you can understand. We have wanted you to understand and to think and to reason using the scriptures. We walked you through the anti-missionary misleading statements and showed you in the scriptures what was the truth. We have not compromised. That has led to many joining us and then to leave because we would not bend to their erroneous understandings. Each time this happens, it is painful. We have used other sound teachers in some of our messages in order to give you as much information about how to worship Jehovah as we could, and we know that I do not have all the answers. As Paul says, we wanted to present you as the perfect bride to our Father. In 2018, we learned what the scriptures are telling us about the coastlands and their role in the end times, and we could not believe that Jehovah had already developed a relationship between us and Brother Ike in Manila, and that leading to many other groups also. Like all of you, we've waited and watched to see if these things would come to pass or if I would be added to the long list of teachers who totally misunderstood what was being shown to us in the Bible. Today, some are saying that the USA is not destroyed. On Shavuot, just like I said, this is a false statement. I said the 2300 days began, that May 31st started the countdown of 2300 days of Daniel 8. George Floyd was killed May 25th. By May 31st, the entire USA and much of the world was rioting and looting and fighting with the police. We will talk more about this in the next section. We had people attacking us before May 31, ridiculing us, and they still are. It's nothing new because it's been going on since 2005. Who is Joseph Dumond to be qualified to teach these things? He's just like any of you who one day was shown these truths about the Jubilee cycles. And I said in a prayer to Jehovah back in 2005 that I would tell people about this, even though I had no clue how to do so. If he would teach me his truths and not let me get involved in lies and misleading doctrines. And actually I have a similar story, not as big as Joe's, but the Septuagint, I'm going, okay, I want to present these truths to the world, and I'm doing that through YouTube. And you know what? Let Yah's will be done. I think that's just something that I've been doing every day now for over a month now. And it's been a great blessing. And, not just doing it to argue, because that's not really the point. It's really to have the love for the truth and to present facts, to present the Masoretic and the Septuagint, and just compare them and use, the Ruach HaKodesh to lead you into the understanding and to obey what it says. Okay. With the unbelievable events taking place this year on a worldwide scale, there's no way I could be manufacturing any of this. It's clearly laid out in Leviticus 26. But few have believed us when we use the words of Jehovah. We could not get any major Christian radio or TV show to present our teachings except for the 700 Club in the Philippines, and we were on there twice now. Then this year, in 2020, people are having dreams of the end times, and with no mention of Jehovah's words, their message is going viral. People are more intrigued with dreams which cannot be verified than they are with the word of Jehovah, which can be verified. Having said that, it's interesting that these dreams of fist pounding calendars and pointing at certain months seem to be matching with what we have been telling you. Others are dreaming about the black wolf, and they're now warning about what they see. Sighted Moon does not teach based on dreams. We have taught you according to the word of Jehovah. We have completed the mission that we began in 2005. So now what? The next 13 years are going to be the most dangerous ones for all of us. We're told Matthew 24:22, no flesh would be saved, okay? Isaiah 13, verses 9 to 13. And then Isaiah 26, verses 17 to 21. It's based on the understanding of Revelation 11, verses 3 to 6. And this year of 2020 begins the 2300-day count of Daniel 8. This 6 1/4 year time period is when the nations of Israel are going to be slaughtered, so that just a remnant is left. During this time, there is a sabbatical year that begins in 2023 and goes to Aviv 24. We must have food stored during this crisis. With looting, burning of homes, and war, it will be hard to do this. By 2026, when the end of the 2300 days come to pass, many will be starving and in prison. Then the two witnesses begin to declare no rain anywhere on the earth for 3.5 years, as they work to collect the remnant of Israel from around the world. We are told that the coastlands, the isles, will collect Israel at this time. The humble and contrite spirit, Isaiah 66, verses 1 to 5, 1 to 24. Let me just pause. I'm going to read the bolded section. We're going to read from Isaiah 66, verses 19 to 21. It reads here, I will leave a sign upon them. I will send forth them that have escaped of them to the nations, to Tharshish and Food and Lud and Mozach and to Tubal and to Greece and to the isles afar off. So again, that could be England, the British Isles, or it could be the Philippines. It's hard to say. To those who have not heard my name, nor seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. And they shall bring your brethren out of all nations for a gift to Jehovah with horses and chariots and litters, mules with awnings, to the holy city, Jerusalem, said Jehovah, as though the children of Israel should bring their sacrifices to me with psalms into the house of Jehovah. And I will take of them priests and Levites, says Jehovah. Okay, so that's that. It is with these scriptures in mind that Sighted Moon is now creating a vehicle, a legal entity to work with the Philippines, the coastlands, to prepare for the coming drought by having water access so food can be grown. It is through this legal entity and others that we will be training the Filipinos to be priests, ready to serve Jehovah, and who can then teach the nations and rescue the remnant of Israel, as Isaiah 66 says. We have already begun. We have a team working on the legalities, and we are about to form an NGO incorporated company. We have others working on other projects which this company can use to help the Philippine people during this coming crisis. At the same time, the NGO will be hiring other corporations to do the work on the ground and to solicit donations for this work from government sources and businesses. We can use more help. If you want to be part of this 10-year plan, actually a 10 and 13-year plan, then write to us and tell us how you can help and what skills you have. And pray for those who are working on this now, that Jehovah inspires them in each aspect of their all-volunteer work so that His will can be done and many can be saved. The next phase has already begun, 2020. It has been an eventful year thus far. I do hope each one of you is taking the perpetual calendar that you can get from our website and using it and making notes. Pauline created this, and I did not see the need for it at the time. I now see just how useful this tool is and has been. And we read this before in the newsletter, the 16th one, so I won't read it again. So I think it's a repetition of what we read. We posted the above on June 6, 2020. We were looking for something to possibly happen on the 17th of the 4th month, and again for something to happen on the 9th of Av. We had no clue what might happen, but we were looking, watching. Keep in mind, we are 1 month earlier than most this year. The 17th of the month was on June the 10th, 2020. June 10 to 12, the U.S. stock market dropped 2,462 points. Seattle protesters take over city blocks to create a police-free autonomous zone. Hundreds of protesters have taken over several blocks of Seattle and transformed it into the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ, helping to amplify nationwide protests while offering a real-world example of what a community can look like without police. Then, on June 30th, this was written about the police-free zone. And on July 1st, 2020, it was finally taken back by police. For several weeks now, activists have been squatting in a 6-block area of downtown Seattle known as CHOP, or CHAZ, to protest police violence against black males. Yet, spasms of violence against black males keep erupting in the police-free area. During this time, news reports and videos showed transport truckers being shot at on interstate highways, trucks being mobbed and the drivers pummeled and their cargo looted. I saw videos of trains being looted and Amazon delivery trucks being looted, not to mention store after store, and no one tried to stop it, but all joined in the frenzied mob mentality. Whites were beaten and sucker punched and denied access to various roadways. Now, I'm wondering if anyone noticed what took place on the 9th of Av, which was on July the 1st, 2020. Germany is at the heart and core of United Europe. This is by Josue Michels, July the 6th. I'm just going to scan over it and give you the highlights. So essentially, it says here that Germany began its 6-month presidency of the European Council for the first time in 13 years. So we're seeing Germany taking more of a lead on the world stage, specifically in Europe. Angela Merkel has the opportunity to team up with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to shape the European Union for years to come. And then it closes with, at the end of World War II, the US and Great Britain and France were determined to never let Germany rise again to dominate Europe. The NATO formed in part to prevent German military dominance. Britain joined the EU in part to prevent German political dominance. France hoped to lead Europe in partnership with a submissive Germany. Today, it is clear that all efforts to contain Germany have failed. Then on July 5th, which was the second lunar eclipse in the past 30 days, we had the following start up. Armed black militia challenges white nationalists at Georgia's Stone Mountain Park. Actually, I sent that one in. But yeah, I saw that news and I was not sure what to make of it. But anyway, that is happening, whether it's real or a hoax, but there's something bubbling up, and you can see there's a lot of race wars or some kind of race politics, race baiting going on to divide, especially America, by color, like a race war. I suppose that's been going on since the Civil War, but anyhow, I think it's very, in my opinion, very childish, very petty, where people can't look past the color of the skin, and people resort to those kinds of things. But it's the Spirit of God that really gives us the peace and the understanding and the ability to look past those things and to just see each other as brothers and sisters in Mashiach, in Jesus Christ. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I just thought it was disturbing to see things like that. But you know what? Jehovah has all power over these events. From our newsletter of May 30th, we have the statement from Cyrus Harding. The peak of the crazy cycle, as he called it, was going to be ending on July 4th, as the lunar eclipse took place. Today is Shabbat, July 11th, or yesterday was, when the moon, in conjunction with Mars, in the tail of the great sea monster Cetus, Israel was supposed to take control of the Jordan Valley on July the 1st, but has put this operation off for the moment. When will this take place, and what will be the reaction of the world when it happens? We wait and watch. Perhaps this is what the next crazy cycle is that Cyrus warned us about recently. Since I wrote that newsletter on May 30, we now have the third witness who had a dream that in September, November this year of 2020, something big is going to happen. We also have to add the following information to the potential dates above. Over the past 2 weeks, 6 attacks have taken place on this country's nuclear facilities. I'm not going to say their name. So, on June 25th, in this area, can't pronounce that, 12 miles east of Tehran, according to satellite data, the explosion and subsequent fire seems to have taken place at a facility linked to the production of solid propellant rockets. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, this site is made up of numerous underground tunnels suspected to be used in missile assembly. The second attack of note took place in the morning of July the 2nd. At this nuclear complex, the semi-official news agency reported that a building within this complex was damaged after a fire, with no casualties. This facility is well known to followers of this country's military nuclear program. The attacked building was constructed in 2012 by this country for the development of advanced centrifuges. Although they believe it was Israel that did these attacks, they have no real proof. I will be watching for retaliatory strike from them or its proxies in the weeks and months ahead. Mysterious explosions. Okay, so we just spoke about that. I'm not going to read that again, but essentially it's just more detailed as to this development. The Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah. Friday, August 21, begins sunset the night before, is the day we expect to begin the Feast of Trumpets. That's just over a month from now. This is now just 7 weeks away. Wow, that's coming up fast. This year is a very difficult year to plan anything with the world being in a lockdown state. We are not going to begin teaching each week on the meaning of each holy day and some things you did not know before. Maybe he meant we are now. I think it's a typo. We are now going to begin teaching each week on the meaning of each holy day, things you did not know before. So atonement is approximately estimated to be Sunday, August 30. If the trumpets goes as predicted or as projected. Feast of Tabernacles will then be on or around Friday, September the 4th. It goes on for 7 days, and then the 8th day will be around the 11th, September 11th. Very significant date. All of these dates will not be finalized until the crescent moon is seen Thursday evening, August the 20th. That's a very important thing. Migdal Eder and the birth of Messiah. We're about halfway through the newsletter. We first presented the following article in 2016, which was shown to us by Chad Wilhelm. A few weeks ago, we shared with you the deception of the Aleph Tav, how Satan has impersonated these two to lead people away from the truth. Today, we're going to share with you another one of these truths that very few talk about, and yet it makes so much sense and affirms what we already knew. Satan has deceived the whole world except you. Everyone except you, right? No, he has deceived the whole world. Isaiah 14:12, we're told how Satan would even think to become like God. And it is in this method of being like Jehovah, he has deceived the whole world. And that includes all of us. How many of you are still keeping and celebrating Christmas, the so-called birthday of Jesus, the Messiah? Yehoshua said Satan was the father of lies. John 8:42. And it is these lies that have been passed down to us from our fathers. Jeremiah 16, verse 9, 19 and 20. Romans 1:25. Once we learn the truth about how our fathers have lied to us, we want nothing to do with it altogether. So we shun all activities surrounding Christmas. But in so doing, Satan has again kept us from the truth. First in believing the lie, and then in ignoring the truth, as we stay away from those lies. But the best lies are often told with a mixture of truth in them. Let us now search out the truth of the birth of Yehoshua and understand it as it should be in the plan of Jehovah. This article is presented by Chad and Marilyn Wilhelm, who shared it with me last fall, 2015. I waited till now, 2016, to share it with you. It fits perfectly with our teaching on the birth of Yehoshua being on the Feast of Trumpets. Again, stop and think. Mary had given birth and would be unclean for 40 days. And it says in Leviticus 12:2 regarding the length of her purifying. The nursing baby, Yehoshua, would have touched her in order to be breastfed, and each time the baby touched the unclean Mary, the baby would then become unclean. Leviticus 15:19-23. So exactly how would the infant Yehoshua be able to go into the temple on the 8th day of Sukkot to be circumcised, as some teach you that his birth was on the first day of Sukkot? Just stop and think for a moment. It's impossible for the infant to go up to the temple until at least 40 days after his birth. This is just another indicator we have that he was born on the Feast of Trumpets. More again on this next week, but this week I want to share this teaching from Chad. The Greek and Hebrew fonts do not come across on this website. They're shown as question marks. So if you want them, they're all on Chad's site, which you can go to the link there. Migdal Eder and the birth of Messiah. Okay. My hope is that you will get a better picture of the birth of Messiah rather than the traditional view. The tradition says Yeshua's birthplace was in a cave over which the Basilica of the Nativity was built in Bethlehem. According to Origen of Alexandria, the Roman Emperor Constantine built a basilica over this cave in the 4th century at the request of his mother, Helena. It was destroyed, and the present basilica was built by Emperor Justinian in 530 AD. Origen of Alexandria wrote that it was generally accepted that Yehoshua was born in a cave at Bethlehem, which could be visited in his day. So these are some pictures there. It looks like the basilica. There's no evidence that can be found in the Bible to support that claim. Let's turn to a familiar passage of Scripture and see what clues we can uncover from the text. This is Luke chapter 2, revisiting the birth, clues from the text. So I'm not going to read that. I'll just read the commentary. In verses 7, 12, and 16, I've put in bold that what the King James has translated from the Greek. These are the words with the Strong's Concordance in a manger. However, when one looks at the particular text through an actual Greek interlinear, there is a missing Greek word. Here is what the text looks like from the interlinear. The Greek word is not translated as it should be, although it is my opinion that the translators, in an attempt to smooth out the text, inserted a instead of the. Let's now take a look at this interesting Greek word. According to the Thayer Greek Dictionary, this Greek word is defined as the definite article. Then the in its masculine, feminine, or neuter gender, the demonstrative pronoun. Examples: this, that, or these. The next word that should be studied in this passage of Luke chapter 2 is manger. The Greek word is 5336. This word comes from the Greek word pateomai, to eat, manger or stall. Listed below are the Hebrew words that are most similar to the Greek word. Okay, so the word could be translated as manger, but if we look at the ancient time and culture during Yeshua's day, I'm of the opinion that this manger was more of a stable or stall to house livestock. We will discuss this further in a bit. Actually, I'm going to look this up myself. I have a Bible. Okay, so I did look it up in my New Testament. It's called the Source New Testament by Dr. A. Nyland, and it does say manger, so we'll continue reading. Luke 2:15. After the shepherds were told about the Messiah, how did they know where to go? Where would the shepherds have known to go? In Bethlehem to find the baby, Yeshua. There were no directions provided. What we know from the Bible about Micah 5:2 and Luke 2:1-20. Messiah was to be born in Bethlehem. Luke records the birthplace of Messiah as Bethlehem. It is the city of David and of his father's inheritance. Although the New Testament does not tell us where in Bethlehem, the Tanakh does. But do we go back and read the verses for context? Micah 4, chapter 4, verses 1 to chapter 5, verse 4. To summarize, Jehovah explains what it will be like in the millennial reign of Messiah. It explains what will happen before that day. So the significance of Migdal Eder. And you, tower of the flock, okay. To you it shall come, even the first dominion. The kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem. Okay, so tower, bed, okay. To grow, become great or important. Promote, make powerful, praise, magnify, do great things, to be magnified. What did the sages of Israel think about Micah 4:8 and 5:1-2? Okay. The sages of old understood Micah 4:8 and 5:1-2 to be about the coming of Messiah. So Yeshua's birth at Migdal Eder. Where have we seen these words before? Migdal Eder, from Genesis 35, verse 21. Let me look that up. So I did look this up. It does say Tower of Gader in the Septuagint. But anyhow, it says here, Rachel's tomb in Bethlehem. Why is this significant? Because even the sages of old understood this passage of Scripture was a prophecy concerning Messiah. They understood Genesis 35:21 and Micah 4:8 were connected. According to Targum Jonathan, Genesis 35:21 is written this way. Okay. Jacob proceeded and spread his tent beyond the Tower of Eder, the place from where it is to be. The king Mashiach will be revealed at the end of the days. Okay, I'm going to look in my translation. Okay, in the Septuagint it says, Micah 4 verse 8, and you, dark tower of the flock, or gloomy or foul tower of the flock, daughter of Zion, on you the dominion shall come and enter in, the first kingdom from Babylon to the daughter of Jerusalem. So that's what it says in the Septuagint. So it's quite different from what the Masoretic is saying. Was been hidden away because of the sins of the congregation of Zion. The kingdom shall come to you, and the former dominion shall be restored to the kingdom of the congregation of Jerusalem. But it says, the first kingdom from Babylon to the daughter of Jerusalem. So that's interesting. Interesting difference, but I'm going to keep reading on and just see where we're going with this. Shadow picture of Messiah, Yeshua. Just as the naming of Leah's children reveals Jehovah's plan of Messiah, the Messiah came as Elohim's son, Reuben. He was heard, Simeon to hear. Reuben means to see a son, by some, and joined to, Levi joined by others. We should praise him, Judah, praise, because he paid the wages, Issachar wages of sin. excuse me, soon he will come to dwell, Zebulun, habitation, with us, and he will rule, judge, Dina, judgment over the whole world. Actually, Dan is also a judge too. Also note how Rachel's children are thematically connected to Messiah Yeshua. Joseph, breadman, suffering servant, exalted to the right hand of Pharaoh, savior of Egypt. Yeshua, bread of life, suffering servant, exalted to the right hand of the Father, savior of the world. Actually, Joseph was also savior of the world because the famine was worldwide. What about Benjamin? How is Rachel's other son, Benjamin, a shadow picture of Messiah? Okay, son of the right hand, Tower of Eder. He came the first time as a suffering servant, son of sorrows. Yeshua now sits at the right hand of the Father. So the right hand is the connection. Location of Migdal Eder. After Jacob left Bethel, he came to Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock. And there, Rachel, actually, that is just a translation. So the Septuagint does say dark tower of the flock. So very well, that is just this, that is the name of the place. And there Rachel began hard labor. She delivered Benjamin. She died and was buried there in Ephrathah, which was in Bethlehem. After burying Rachel, Jacob moved his flocks beyond Migdal Eder. Tower of Eder. Excuse me. Okay, we've been going for, I think, 2 hours now. Okay, I didn't realize how late it was getting. Okay, so continuing on. Jacob moved his flocks beyond Migdal Eder. This would pinpoint the location as being near to the north to what is present-day Bethlehem. This establishes that Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock, was in Bethlehem. Keep in mind that the area which is called Bethlehem in biblical times covered a larger area than does present-day Bethlehem. And Migdal Eder was in that city, or just on the outskirts of the city. The oldest tradition, based upon Genesis 35 and 48, places ancient Bethlehem Ephratah northeast of the current-day city and about 4 miles south of the old city of Jerusalem. Other sources suggest Migdal Eder, or the Tower of the Flock, is a location on the outskirts of Bethlehem. The Septuagint has the location between Bethel and Rachel's tomb. Eusebius locates it 1.9 kilometers east of Bethlehem, and others with a place called Sian al-Ghanam, southwest of Jerusalem. This puts Migdal Eder very close to the modern-day marker of RBK IHKR, Kever Rachel, the tomb of Rachel. Isn't it interesting that it is the third holiest site in Judaism? Our brother Judah continues to pray for Rachel and her children, the tribes of Joseph and Benjamin. The significance of Migdal Eder and the Holy Temple. Now that we have begun to uncover some clues about where Yeshua was born, let's see if we can incorporate anything to do with the Holy Temple and the temple services. When the temple stood, there was the twice daily offering of a male lamb instructed in the Torah called the Tamid, continual burnt offering, Numbers 28. It was the first and last offering of the day in the Holy Temple. This offering was specific in that it could only be a male lamb without spot or blemish. It had to be perfect, or tamim. According to the Mishnah, expressly forbids the keeping of flocks throughout the land of Israel except in the wilderness, and the only flocks otherwise kept would be those for the temple services. Who were the shepherds? Luke chapter 2, verses 1 to 20. And accordingly, that the shepherds who watched over them were not ordinary shepherds. More than likely, these shepherds resided near Bethlehem, were none other than the shepherds from Migdal Eder, who were well aware what the sages of old taught, that the Messiah might well be announced from Migdal Eder in Bethlehem. There is a good possibility that these shepherds were either Levites or designated shepherds specifically trained to watch over sheep for temple services. I believe that they would have cared for and inspected each newborn lamb of any defects or blemishes, and it was these Levites, in my opinion, that declared whether or not these newborn clean animals were acceptable for temple service. The sign: a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in the manger. The Greek word used here for swaddling cloths is sparganou, from sparganon, a strip, from a derivative of the base of that word, meaning to strap or wrap with strips. To swathe an infant after the Oriental custom, wrap in swaddling clothes. It is interesting that this Greek word is used because it comes from the Greek word sparasso, a verb meaning to convulse or tear. Continuing on, from spiro, to grasp, through the idea of spasmodic contraction. What I am getting at here is that this Greek word, translated as swaddling cloths, was more applicable to preventing a newborn animal or baby from scratches or injury. To further emphasize my point, in the book The Chronological Gospels by Michael Rood, Rood comments on the swaddling cloths from Luke 2, verse 7. A child of the king and potential heir to the throne was salted and swaddled as part of the initial dedication of the child, and in recognition of the parent's responsibility to raise the child according to the straight path. Ezekiel 16, verse 4. Okay. Soon after birth, the child was washed with salt water and bound in the swaddling cloths, with all of his limbs made straight. Swaddling cloths were made from priests' garments that were no longer serviceable. This cloth was used for the wicks in the temple menorah and for swaddling the sons of kings. Approaching the subject from the Hebrew perspective will show that while swaddling cloths were used in the handling of newborn babies, swaddling bands were used for subduing animals prior to sacrifice. These swaddling bands were strips of gauze-like cloth used to restrain a lamb being prepared for inspection before sacrifice to prevent thrashing, that they not blemish themselves. Could Yehoshua, the Lamb of Elohim that takes away the sins of the world, have been born at the birthing place, Tower of the Flock, Migdal Eder, that was used to bring forth newborn lambs, destined for the temple? The place where the shepherds used to inspect the lambs of any blemish to determine if they could be used for temple sacrifices, not only the Tamid offering, but also the Passover lambs for Israel and the high priest. Could Yehoshua have been wrapped in the clothing of the garments of temple Levites? Let us now go to Bethlehem, continued. So I'm looking at Luke chapter 2, verse 7. It says here, she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him up in baby clothes of strips of cloth. strips of cloth and placed them in a manger because there was no room for them in the guest house. So strips of cloth, there's a footnote. It says here, what does this mean? The standard baby clothes of the culture. And then verse 6 has a wide meaning. The guest house can mean an inn, place where burdens were unloosened, general's quarters, reception rooms for messengers. So that was the standard baby clothes for this culture, and that's what they did. They put even the sons of kings in these swaddling clothes. How did the shepherds know where to go? Harold Smith writes, there was no need for the angels to give the shepherds directions to the birthplace because they already knew. These were the men who raised sacrificial lambs that were sacrificed in the temple. When the angelic announcement came, they already knew exactly where to go, as Luke 2 indicates. For the sign of the manger could only mean the manger at the base of the tower of the flock, as it is found in the original Greek wording of Luke 2, 7, 12, and 16. It does say manger. You cannot explain the meaning or direction of the sign that you were given or the response unless you have the right manger, the right shepherds, and the proper Hebraic perspective. And I have to add that in the Septuagint, in Micah, it does say the dark tower of what so have you, but the original translation is, like when you translate those words, it is Migdal Eder. Essentially, it's the name of the place. So it is a translation. A lot of times the Septuagint will translate into English these words in Hebrew or whatever the name is. But when you translate it back into Hebrew, it is the name of the place. So that happens quite a bit. Extra thoughts. Messiah, Yehoshua, the Passover lamb, came into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. Rabbinic tradition has the high priest riding on a donkey, going to and from Bethlehem, perhaps Migdal Eder, with his Passover lamb back into Jerusalem through the sheep gate. Why is this significant? In the book of Nehemiah, we read the following. Then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests. They built the sheep gate. They sanctified it and set up the doors of it. Even unto the tower of Mea, they sanctified it, unto the tower of Hananeel. This was the first gate listed in Jerusalem. Okay, I'm going to look that up. Okay, essentially it says the same thing, except instead of Mea, it says 100. But again, it's most likely very well translation of the word Mea is 100, or 100 is Mea. So the meaning of Eliashib is a contraction of two words, El and Shuv, meaning God will restore. Petri Paavola, in his research of Jerusalem's gates, spiritual meaning, writes the following. The high priest Eliashib with his brethren and priests built the sheep gate and set up its doors. This is the first gate mentioned. The spiritual meaning of the sheep gate is that the high priest was building it, and that through the sheep gate lambs and sheep were brought to the temple in which they were offered. Messiah Yeshua is the high priest of the renewed covenant, who is the lamb, who was offered for the sake of our sins. The spiritual meaning of the sheep gate is the death and offering of the lamb, through which sacrifice, blood, and resurrection brings us forgiveness of sins and redemption. According to Nehemiah 3:1, the high priest was setting up the doors of the sheep gate, which means that he is the door of the sheep. What did Yeshua proclaim? I am the door of the sheep, John 10. Side note, in my opinion, Yeshua came in through the sheep gate, destined to be offered. Yehoshua was hoisted on the execution tree. At the same time, the first Tamid offering was offered up in the temple, the third hour. And after the last Tamid offering, at the ninth hour, Yehoshua said, it is finished, dying on that tree to redeem us of our sins and to restore us back to the Father. Just as Eliashib, meaning El will restore, the high priest rebuilt the door, to the Father's house, so too does our high priest, Messiah, Yahushua, who is the door, restores us back to the Father, putting all the clues together. What we know is that the Messiah was to be born in Bethlehem. He was revealed from Migdal Eder. This tower more than likely laid close to the town, near the road to Jerusalem, Old Hebron Road, Highway 60 in modern-day Israel, and not far away from where the tomb of Rachel is located, current day. The Mishnah tells us that the flocks which pastured there were destined for temple sacrifices. The Mishnah tells us that the shepherds, who I believe were Levites, watching over them were specifically trained to inspect the newborn lambs for any defects. This same location where newborn lambs were born and inspected, destined for sacrifice at the Holy Temple, is the same place that Messiah Yahushua was born. He was inspected to be unblemished and destined to be offered for us. The shepherds, Levites, would have known the exact place to go look for this sign at none other than Migdal Eder. Here's what I find fascinating about all this. First, it places Yeshua's birth in the traditional location for Passover lambs to be born. Fitting, since he became the Passover lamb of Elohim who took away the sins of the world. Second, it explains how the shepherds knew where to go to find the newborn baby, and why being wrapped in swaddling clothes would be a significant clue. Finally, it explains why those shepherds were notified, as it was their holy calling to certify temple-approved and Passover lambs upon birth. Something else to think about. Think of Messiah as a newborn baby, wrapped or bound at the birthing place of the lambs, destined for temple sacrifice. The shepherds, who I believe were of the Levitical priesthood, who had heard of the sage teachings of Migdal Eder, the prophecy of Micah and Genesis, and the place where Messiah would appear. Think of all the connections of Messiah from his birth until his crucifixion. How much deeper can we draw from this than the traditional nativity scene that so many people have come to believe? Shalom and blessings, Chad. And I don't know if that's all. So the links there and the map here, looking at that. Oh, there's more. Okay. I, Jacob Howard, wrote Dr. Charlie Dyer, who is the speaker on the land and the book radio, a question about Migdal Eder mentioned in Micah 4:8. This was Dr. Dyer's response. All right. About 5 minutes to go. Jacob, thank you for your email, and thanks as well for your kind words. Denny and I both appreciate the privilege God has given us to serve him in this way. You have encouraged us both. As far as Migdal Eder is concerned, there is no universal identification of the site, but I do believe it was a real site. The best thing I've read on the subject is from Alfred Edersheim's The Life and Times of Jesus, the Messiah. You can find his complete work online at Google Books. I'll include his quotation here, and then I'll follow it with a few observations. I'll also highlight the key point he makes in the quote. But as we pass from the sacred gloom of the cave, i.e., he was just talking about the birth of Jesus in a cave, out into the night, its sky all aglow with starry brightness, its loneliness is peopled, and its silence made vocal from heaven. There is nothing now to conceal, but much to reveal. though the manner of it would seem strangely incongruous to Jewish thinking. And yet, Jewish tradition may here prove both illustrative and helpful. That the Messiah was to be born in Bethlehem was a settled conviction. Equally so was the belief that he was to be revealed from Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock. This Migdal Eder was not the watchtower for the ordinary flocks, which pastured on the barren sheep ground beyond Bethlehem, but lay close to the town, on the road to Jerusalem. A passage in the Mishnah leads to the conclusion that the flocks which pastured there were destined for temple sacrifices, and accordingly, that the shepherds who watched over them were not ordinary shepherds. The latter were under the ban of rabbinism. On account of their necessary isolation from religious ordinances and their manner of life, which rendered strict legal observance unlikely, if not absolutely impossible. The same Mishnaic passage also leads us to infer that these flocks lay out all the year round, since they are spoken of as in the fields 30 days before the Passover, that is, in the month of February, when in Palestine the average rainfall is nearly greatest. Thus, Jewish tradition, in some dim manner, apprehended the first revelation of the Messiah from that Migdal Eder, where shepherds watched the temple flocks all the year round. Of the deep symbolic significance of such a coincidence, it is needless to speak. If Edersheim is correct, and I believe he is, the location for Migdal Eder would be north of Bethlehem and near the road from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. That road is the old Hebron road one drives on between Jerusalem and Bethlehem today. I believe this puts the location somewhere between the Jewish kibbutz of Ramat Rachel and Bethlehem, probably just to the west of Har Homa. There used to be an actual sheepfold in this area where I would take our groups, but sadly, it has been covered over by the modern road that now goes to Har Homa. A key point here, Edersheim indicates that Migdal Eder was an actual spot, but he is not saying it was a town or village. Rather, the name means watchtower of the flock, which seems to identify it as a specific pasture area for sheep. And the sheep that grazed here were those specifically destined for temple sacrifice. In that sense, the shepherds keeping watch over the temple sacrifices were the ones to whom God announced the birth of the ultimate sacrificial lamb. I am attaching a screenshot from Google Earth that might be of help in identifying the location for Migdal Eder. Note that Ramat Rachel is at the top of the picture and Bethlehem is at the bottom. The road running along the left side of the picture is the old Hebron road, and Homat Shemuel Har Homa is just to the right of center in the picture. Based on Edersheim's description, I would place Migdal Eder almost in the corner of the picture. Almost in the center of the picture, north of Bethlehem, just to the west of Har Homa, and east of the road from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. Since the word means tower of the flock, it is likely a high spot in this area where sheep would graze. The hills right around or right at Har Homa are probably the best location. I hope this is helpful, Charlie. The presence of a gift, okay. That's an interesting thought. Satan knows Jehovah is returning on a feast day on the biblical calendar. This is why he's been working for centuries to destroy this calendar. Satan has changed the birthday of Yeshua from the first day of the 7th month which usually happens in the fall, to December 25th, which usually happens in the winter, and is associated with a lot of pagan holidays. He has everyone worshiping him already on December 25th, and the world thinks it is Yehoshua, and most of the Jews do not know what this day of shouting is all about. It is the birthday of our Messiah, and it is the day he is going to come back in the future. I'm just going to look at the comments, and if there's any, I'll mention them. Okay, so that's the conclusion of the newsletter. There's some comments here, but to be honest, it gets into a rabbit hole I don't want to go down, and conspiracy theory. So, it's just one side will call the other side evil, and vice versa. So it's really no point. Jehovah knows the truth of the matters of who is doing what and for what reasons and who is who, and that's beyond my pay grade. So I'm going to stop the newsletter there. Jehovah bless you all and make your way prosperous. Until next time, this is the Excited Moon newsletter, audio, video for this week of July the 11th, 2020. Until next time, Shavua Tov.